Next, I'm going to talk about steelhead. Their scientific name is Oncorhynchus micus, and they're a unique fish. They're born in creeks like ours. They migrate down to the estuary and then out to the ocean, where they grow to adulthood. And then when it's time to reproduce, they reverse that journey, traveling back through the estuary, back up the creeks to spawn. So this species has faced some challenges. They used to be quite abundant, and now their status is threatened. So loss of habitat is an issue. They need both the creek habitat and the ocean habitat to be healthy in order to thrive. Another challenge for them is migration barriers. They have to be able to pass freely from the creeks out to the ocean and then back in order to complete their life cycle. And another challenge for them is invasive predators. So non-native fish that prey on steelhead can really have an impact on them. One of the predators that have a big impact on steelhead are the Sacramento pike minnow. This is a non-native fish that was introduced to our watershed, probably planted in a reservoir for fishing. And they unfortunately prey on juvenile steelhead. So we're involved in pike minnow management efforts. And so here, these folks are capturing fish that are in the creek. So they use either angling, nets, or electrofishing. And so this is a backpack that builds up a charge, and it's dispersed into the water here, and it stuns all the nearby fish, and then they scoop them up in the nets. They take everything on the banks of the creek, and they weigh and measure them, identify them, and all the native species are put back in the creek, and then the pike minnow are removed. So this graph shows a comparison of 2 different years. So in 2017, this was the first pike minnow removal work we've done. And we counted all the fish we found, and we found very few steelhead, and we found quite a few pike minnow. And of course, these pike minnow were not returned to the creek. And then when we came back the next year to repeat the survey, we found quite a few more steelhead and very few pike minnow. So that was very encouraging, because an adult pike minnow can consume between 150 and 200 juvenile steelhead, so they can make a real impact on the steelhead population. We were also involved in a project using environmental DNA, or eDNA. So you all know what DNA is. You've probably all watched a million crime shows. So this is the specific signature that's left behind. So for instance, say you want to know everything living in a creek. So you could stand there and you could try to survey everything that swims by, but that's pretty difficult to do. So instead, what you could do is you could take a water sample and you can analyze it for eDNA, because everything that's living there leaves behind traces of DNA that you can detect with testing. And that way you can see everything that's living in that creek. So we were involved in a project where we collected water from the creeks to do eDNA analysis. And then we also collected samples from the gut of pike minnow to determine if they were eating steelhead. So this map includes some of the results from that survey work. And so the red lines are areas where pike minnow were found, and the green are areas where steelhead were found. And we see that the pike minnow seem to prefer Choro Creek, and the steelhead are also found up these tributaries where the water is much colder. And so that's the reason pike minnow prefer warmer water, so they tend to stay on the main stem, Choro Creek, and the steelhead prefer colder water, so they tend to try to escape up these tributaries.